Hello again everyone, Ryan Taylor here. Hope things are all good your end. And we are around about 8 to 9 days out from the end of the summer transfer window, which for people like myself is actually a bit of a relief really. You know, we've been writing about some of these stories for the best part of 2-3 months now. You know, when I go to work or when I start a day at work, you know, I can't escape these stories. You know, the likes of Frankie de Jong, you know, maybe last month, Jules Kawande, these stories that have really dragged out. And, you know, when you can't get away from them, when you're writing about them 24/7 almost, it really does get quite tedious, to be honest with you. And I've been quite surprised with the lack of movement in the Premier League within the last month, sorry. I think the majority of sides got their business done nice and early ahead of pre-season. The likes of Tottenham, you know, Arsenal got the crux of their business done as well. But we're still, you know, heading into the final week or so, there's still some big players at the table, the likes of Chelsea, United. You think Arsenal are going to do some business? Potentially Liverpool may sign a midfielder after what we saw at Old Trafford last night, where the Reds were defeated 2-1. So there's still some stuff bubbling away beneath the surface, and I do expect it to still be a frantic end to the window. We always see teams try and bundle some last-minute signings over the line. I do expect that to be the case. But I wanted to just clarify that, unfortunately, this morning's column, Taylor's Tuesday transfers, which we're going to discuss in a second, that was my last column of the summer window. I know there is one more week to go, but I am on holiday from Saturday. Coincidentally, I'll get back on deadline day, so I'd imagine I'd still, you know, I'm still going to be working a little bit, but I'm not at work technically, so there may not be some stories as such from me for the final week of the window, which in a way I'm kind of glad about actually, because I know it's the final stretch and it's exciting, the final week of the window, but it has been, you know, really tedious. As I said, you know, I've dedicated a lot of time to finding stories, researching, making calls, sending emails, WhatsApp, and you know, kind of glad to see the back of it really, so we can concentrate on the football, and I can also get my Mondays back, which is my day off. Haven't had that really this summer because my column on Tuesday, so I've been spending a lot of time writing that, so I hope you've all enjoyed. But without further ado, we're going to get on to some of the stories that featured in this morning's column, and we're going to discuss them at length really. And the first one being the story that was revealed by David Ornstein of The Athletic, that Arsenal have made Pedro Neto their priority transfer target. Now, Mikel Arteta's been quite open really about the fact he wants to sign another forward. When he's been quizzed on whether Arsenal are done in the transfer window, he's very much left it open. Hasn't made any promises as such, but he's definitely said that the club is still looking to see what's out there. And we know for a while that they've been looking for a winger, because they of course went for Rafinha, who eventually joined Barcelona despite Chelsea agreeing a fee with Leeds. And, you know, if we look at Rafinha, as I've talked about in previous videos, the kind of stylistic profile that Arteta's looking for is a left-footed right winger, someone that can do what Bukayo Saka is doing. You know, Saka is a player that is of course going to remain integral to Arsenal moving forward, but Arsenal do need a little bit of flexibility, some extra depth in attack, just to ease the pressure on the likes of Saka and Martinelli. Although, you know, on the basis of what we've seen in the first 3 games of the season, you know, Arsenal are going very strong. So I do think if they're able to get another forward over the line, then it would, I can't talk. It would really stand them in good stead of making a top 4 finish, which at the moment, you know, given their sort of 7 points ahead of the likes of Liverpool, you know, they're in a very strong position, even though we're just 3 games in. So let's talk about Neto. So effectively, you know, Wolves are certainly under no pressure to sell. Last week they offloaded Morgan Gibbs-White in a deal worth up to £42 to £44 million, with some add-ons in there, which, you know, realistically probably won't be achieved. So I know a lot of people sort of raised eyebrows at that price tag and figure, but I don't expect that deal to kind of reach that total. I think it was an initial £25 million up front. You know, it's still a very good deal for Wolves. Otherwise, you know, they wouldn't have sold Gibbs-White. They offered him a new contract, and Forest, you know, very strongly tried to sign him. They made several bids, but, you know, eventually when they received that kind of money, they felt was kind of an irresistible offer as such. Of course, that affects Neto really, because they're not really in a position where they They need to sell. They've added Gonzalo Guedes to their squad, as we saw on Saturday. He started up top with Daniel Podence and Pedro Neto in a front three, I believe it was. And then you've also got the likes of Hwang Hee-chan, Adama Traore, who was also in the final year of his contract. I do expect him to potentially get a move in the final week of the window. Don't quite know where that could be, but Neto really isn't someone that Wolves are looking to sell. He's tied down to a long-term contract until 2027. So, any fee that Wolves would demand for the player would be, significantly, high. It would be a premium fee. The figures kind of floated about of £50 million, which I think would represent a fair deal from a Wolves perspective. But, even though we've seen players like Anthony Gordon at the moment being linked with £60 million move to Chelsea, I do sort of question whether Neto's potentially worth more, given the kind of glimpses and promise he's shown in his first few seasons in the Premier League. He obviously had that bad setback last season I think it was the year before. He had a fractured patella, which is the kneecap. Kept him out for a significant period, and then he's also had various injury struggles since, which have really sort of halted his progression and development. But that's not to say he's still not very highly rated at Wolves. I don't think they would have tied him down to such a big contract as such. And, it speaks volumes that Arsenal were looking to sign him. I think he's the perfect fit, really, for what Mikel Arteta's looking for. He's Premier League proven, 22 years old, tactically flexible. We can play on either flank. Huge potential. The list goes on, really. He's a player that really does sort of fit the Arsenal's recruitment plan like a glove. So it's easy to see why Neto would be of interest to Arsenal. But from what I understand, and this is what I wrote in my column this morning, he's not the only target that Arsenal have sort of on their radar. I've spoken about at length the fact Arsenal are really kind of operating beneath the radar. They've not given much away. Now, I kind of had indications that Neto was one of the targets. It's kind of been sort of loosely mentioned in the media for the best part of around about 3 to 4 weeks now. But David Ornstein was actually able to firm that up. And, he's obviously one of the best at transfers in terms of reporting. I did ask the question about Neto around about 2 to 3 weeks ago to try and firm up whether there was genuine interest. But I didn't get a response on that. And I think that kind of that's telling of how Arsenal are looking to work at the moment. Like I've said, don't want to sound like a broken record, but I have mentioned several times in these videos that Arsenal are trying to do things differently, really, since the Rafinha and Martinez deals, because it was well documented that they were strongly interested. They made bids, and it kind of increases the expectations amongst the fan base. But Arsenal did miss out on both of those players, and then you get supporters sort of saying, why aren't we going for this player if the money's definitely there? But the important thing to state is Arsenal were very specific in what they're trying to do in terms of signings. They're not going to just sign any player. They really want to sign players that are going to fit the project both now and in the future, and players that actually genuinely improve the current options. Neto would of course do that. Another player that would definitely do that has been monitored is Yeremy Pino. I talked about him in the previous video. There's nothing concrete as such in terms of there's some suggestions that Arsenal may have made a bid. No, that is definitely not the case. He's just a player that's been scouted and monitored, and he's very much kind of on that radar at the moment. And from what we understand, it looks like Villarreal would be willing to pursue a sale for far less than his release clause. So ultimately, that may be one to keep an eye on if Wolves decide to dig their heels into the ground over Neto. Just wanted to read out a quote now from him from an interview with The Times, in which he's firmly committed his future really to Wolves, although he has kind of flirted with the idea that he likes the fact, the bigger clubs are showing interest in him. He takes it as a compliment, and it shows that he's doing something right, and furthermore, he wants to better himself. He wants to reach a new level. So he said, "I always like to hear this sort of stuff, but I'm focused on my job here because I'm feeling very good. The things you hear makes you want to work even more. It's good for you and your mentality to know people know your value. The dream of any player is to play in the Champions League. I want to help this club go higher and higher because I think we have the potential with the way we work, the way we sign players, the way we try to arrive here." I think personally from a Wolves perspective, that midfield three they fielded at Tottenham on Saturday of Matthias Nunes, Neves, Moutinho, and you look at like what was fielded last night by Liverpool at Old Trafford in terms of an ageing James Milner. Jordan Henderson really isn't quite at his best. This is the kind of quality of the Premier League. These sides that are outside of the so-called Big Six, yet they're still able to spend big money on players and keep hold of players like Ruben Neves that are just top quality really. So I don't think it would be the end of the world if Neto was to stay at Wolves. But there is a bit of history as well that I wanted to touch upon. Back in 2017, A Bola, which is the Portuguese newspaper, reported that Arsenal had made a 13.2 million bid for Neto. So that was 5 years ago now. So there's long-standing interest from the club. He's a player that Arsene Wenger supposedly looked to sign when he was flourishing at Braga. I think Barcelona were also in the mix before Lazio signed him in a double deal with Bruno Jordão, who also went to Wolves, but it hasn't quite worked out for him. I don't even think he's made many appearances for the first team. Of course, Neto has really come into his own. So there is a little bit of history there in terms of the potential when Neto was really recognised as one of the best Portuguese young players about. Arsenal already had him on their radar. And also, he's also declared that he's an Arsenal fan, and he was an Arsenal fan from when he was younger. So, that could play a part. You can't underestimate that kind of thing, really. That, if Arsenal were to make an offer for a player like Neto to potentially play for the club that he supports, it's a huge pull and attraction that works in Arsenal's favour. So he told TalkSport, when I was a kid growing up watching English football, my favourite team was Arsenal. Because with Arsene Wenger, I thought besides winning trophies, they played very good football. Now I'm with Wolverhampton, I'm very happy. Of course, it's the best club in England now. Just going to take a little drink. But, again, like I said, could only really work in Arsenal's favour if they're prepared to make a move as such. So it's a little thing that sort of works with them. Just wanted to touch on a little bit more Arsenal now. So Nicolas Pepe remains in talks with Nice over a loan switch. I think the understanding from Arsenal's perspective is that they hope Nice can cover a high percentage of his wages in the agreement. £72 million, of course, paid under Unai Emery in 2019. Hasn't worked out for Pepe at all, really. And, from what we've seen, he's not really part of Arteta's plans. I watched All or Nothing on the Amazon documentary, and I don't really want to make these conclusions without actually going on, but throughout that he kind of looks very disinterested and disengaged with what's going on at the club. He doesn't really strike me as a player that's very hungry to prove the doubters wrong as such. We all know what Pepe can do because we've seen a few times glimpses of it, his ability, and when he was in Ligue 1 with Lille, he was phenomenal really in terms of what he was doing, cutting in inside. It was a bit of like an Iron Robben situation where you know what the player's going to do, but you can't stop it because he's that good. But I think for Arsenal now, it's really about trying to get something for the player. I think even a £20 million offer would be acceptable now for Pepe. I don't think you're going to get any more than that. But of course, Nice are looking at a loan deal, and from the discussions that are currently taking place, it very much looks like that is likely to happen, and that is only going to really strengthen Arsenal's chances of getting another winger through the door before the transfer deadline. Just another line now on Ainsley Maitland-Niles as well. I do very much expect him to depart. His contract is up at the end of the season. We sometimes see clubs offer a 1-year extension to secure a loan deal that has a obligation to buy or option to buy. So I wouldn't rule that out, but I think that's unlikely. It's very much likely to be a permanent deal at the moment. West Ham, Fulham, Bournemouth and some European clubs are showing interest in Maitland-Niles. There's a chance Bellerin could go as well. Talked about him in the last video. It's still very much a situation where not much has changed, unfortunately. He would like to return to Real Betis. Barcelona and Udinese are also sort of sniffing around, but I think it's dependent really on whether Arsenal receive an offer. But the later we go in the window, we could potentially see Arsenal free him from his contract, although at the moment that is not something that is likely to happen. Wanted to move on now to Hakim Ziyech, who looks like he could potentially be in line to return to Ajax just 2 years after he joined Chelsea from the Dutch club. So Fabrizio Romano reported on Monday that Ziyech has met with Klaus-Jan Huntelaar, who is his former teammate, but Huntelaar now works for Ajax as an upstairs man, someone who kind of offers support for the on-the-field structure, so supporting the manager with transfers, things like that. He's very heavily involved in the board. So the idea from an Ajax perspective is to bring Ziyech back to the club, but that is not entirely dependent on Antony's move to United. So United have had a £67 million bid rejected for Antony. We expect them to go back in with an improved offer because the player is pushing strongly behind the scenes to move to Old Trafford. He put a picture up last night with his agent, I believe, or the other way around. His agent took a picture with Antony of them watching the game last night. Antony's Brazil teammate Casemiro was presented as a United player. And Antony asked to be left out of the Ajax squad on Sunday that faced Sparta Rotterdam. They won 1-0, but Antony wasn't involved because his head is very much at the moment with couldn't talk for some reason there. His head is very much with Manchester United at the moment. You know, it's a club that he wants to join. You know, the chance to play in the Premier League before the World Cup is a huge attraction. You know, and reunited with Erik ten Hag is another proposition that excites the player. They had a very good relationship during their time together at Ajax. They've won 2 Eredivisie titles. And if Antony is to go, then the clear priority would still be Ziyech, and, you know, pretty much be set in stone that Ajax were to move for him. But I still think Ajax could potentially move for Ziyech, and from what I'm told, it's not dependent on Antony moving to United. So there is scope there for the deal to happen. I think from Ziyech's perspective, he very much feels like he's got some unfinished business in Amsterdam. Only won 1 Eredivisie title in 4 seasons with the club. Reached the Champions League semi-finals in the 2018-19 season under Ten Hag. Also won the Dutch Cup. His brother recently posted a picture as well of Ziyech in a Ajax shirt. So it's a move that Ziyech wants. Chelsea are willing to sanction a permanent deal as well as they continue to move players on. So, you know, all the groundwork is kind of there. It's kind of bubbling away beneath the scenes at the moment, beneath the surface, behind the scenes even, I should say. And the fact, you know, Ziyech has met with Huntelaar, to me, you know, it's a clear indication that this deal, there's positive movement on that front, and it looks like one that could potentially materialise. Just on West Ham now. So Club Brugge midfielder Hans Vanaken, who was the subject of an £8.4 million rejected bid by Brugge from West Ham last week, wants to move to West Ham. He's made that clear after playing 90 minutes in his side's 2-1 win over Kortrijk in the Belgian Pro League. There were some banners displayed by the fans that said, "Don't go Hans." But after the game, he told 11 Sport that he's very much keen to pursue the challenge. He's 29 years old now, so he may not get a chance to play in another league, especially the Premier League. So he sees it as an opportunity he wants to pursue. He told 11 Sports, "This may be my last chance and I want to take it. There'll be new talks next week." And that is the case already, because from what I understand, West Ham had further talks with Brugge on Monday over a deal, and they are expected to up their offer as well, as they really want to push this over the line. You know, it's no secret West Ham need more players. I've talked about it before. And, you know, the 2-0 defeat to Brighton really does showcase that, you know, things are going a little bit stale at the London Stadium. And, you know, I think West Ham really want to build on what they've done in the past 2 seasons, because it's been phenomenal, really, from David Moyes, what he's achieved. The recruitment's been excellent, but it just hasn't happened this summer, and it's starting to look a little bit stale from a West Ham perspective. There is positive news in the sense Emerson Palmieri is expected to be confirmed a West Ham player in the next 24 hours. He's undergone a medical already. It's a £15 million deal, 13 million plus 2 million in add-ons. Of course, it didn't really look likely to happen at some point because personal terms saw the deal break down. But now it definitely seems to be on the right track. So West Ham, I think, will be very active in the final week or so of the window. I expect them to make sort of 3, potentially more signings, and I don't expect there to be many more departures either. Just moving on now to Josh Bowler, or Bowler, I think it's Josh Bowler, plays for Blackpool, very tricky winger. I first saw him when I was watching the FA Cup highlights in January, when I believe Hartlepool beat Blackpool. But Josh Bowler was brilliant that day. He was kind of, he's a very tricky winger. He sort of plays with this, the freedom, short socks, cuts inside, very tricky player, just needs to work on his end product, but very, very dangerous. And he's been one of the best players in the Championship this season. I saw a lot of people online saying how well he played against Burnley on Saturday in the 3-3 draw against Vincent Kompany's side at Turf Moor. And Blackpool have had a reasonably decent start to the season, and Bowler's been at the heart of that. And Nottingham Forest, Fulham and Bournemouth, so all 3 of the newly promoted sides retain an interest in the player. He actually spent 4 years at Everton, Josh Bowler. He was signed from Queen's Park Rangers in 2017, but never made an appearance for the first team before moving on to Blackpool, where he's really sort of impressed. So let's discuss the teams that are interested. So Nottingham Forest, we know how much they've spent. They've gone big, really, spent in excess of 150, 160 million. Bowler is expected to cost relatively cheap. I think he'd be available for under 10 million, potentially less than 5 million, but I'm not quite sure on that. That's kind of just an educated, guess, really, that, Blackpool aren't really a club that going to just demand incredible fees, because they can sign players for relatively cheap figures. And I think selling Bowler would obviously be a devastating blow, really, because he's a talisman for them, and he helped them achieve a very respectable finish last season under Neil Critchley before he departed. But for Championship sides, selling any player like that is going to generate cash to bring in sort of 2 or 3 players. So it may be one they're open to. I think Forest are believed to be the front runners, but Fulham and Bournemouth are also interested. I was also told not to rule out Watford, interestingly, because they have a lot of money at their disposal. And João Pedro looks set to join Newcastle, although there is talk that Everton are looking to hijack the deal. That's going to generate them sort of 25 to 30 million pounds to already go with the 20 million received from Forest for Emmanuel Dennis. There's also talk, Ismaila Sarr could be off. His move to Aston Villa has collapsed, but there's still Premier League clubs interested. And Bowler would really fit what Watford are trying to do, really. They need Championship-proven players that could potentially play in the Premier League as well if the club get promoted. I think with Fulham, I'm not sure how high Bowler is up their shortlist, because there's a lot of other attacking deals they're working on. One being Justin Kluivert, so they're looking to sign the player on loan with a permanent obligation to buy. Neil Maupay is another one. A £15 million deal with Brighton is under discussion, although Maupay was on the bench for Brighton against West Ham at the weekend. And the other one was Bamba Dieng. So there was initial talks between Fulham and Marseille over a deal, but from what I'm told from a source close to the player, Fulham aren't going to sign him. The player isn't really too interested in joining Fulham as well because of Alexander Mitrovic. There isn't going to be many playing opportunities for him. So the race for Bowler is very much hotting up. And just finally, a little bit on Boubakary Soumare, which I find crazy, really, because he was so highly rated when he joined Leicester. It looked like a real snip at £17 million. Leicester are looking to cash in on him. I think they're looking for around £15 million. Just hasn't worked out for one reason or another for him. Monaco were in negotiations with Leicester, but the deal broke down. Now looks like Crystal Palace could potentially arrive at the table. See, they signed Czech Doucouré. Vieira knows French football well from his time with Nice, and Soumare's stock was very high after he won the league with Lille. A player of real quality. I saw him play a couple seasons ago when I watched Lille in the Champions League. I played against the likes of Chelsea, and he's a strong, technical, holding midfield player, but for some reason at Leicester it just hasn't gone to plan. I'm not sure why. Brendan Rodgers doesn't really seem to fancy him. There was also talk that Stade Rennes were interested, but he is not interested in joining Stade Rennes. I know Lille got thrashed 7-1 by PSG on Sunday, but Rennes are kind of in that sort of bracket, the same as Lille, so it's kind of a bit of a sideways move for him. I think he's looking to play Champions League football potentially if he returns to France. And there's other Premier League clubs interested, like I said, mainly Crystal Palace. So that is the crux of the stories from my column, Taylor's Tuesday Transfers. I'm hoping to get another video done by the time before I head off on Saturday. But if I don't, I really want to thank everyone for the support with the YouTube content. I know it's been a little bit of a slow burner because, as I've mentioned, I've been moving house. It's been really hard for me to get content out there, but it's something I'm going to continue moving forward. Hopefully, in January I can pick it back up and be posting regularly again. But I really hope these videos are of use and they're enjoyable. As always, there's going to be a timeline across the bottom here with all the links in terms of what times and segments are discussed, the time frames. But follow me on Twitter at Ryan Taylor Sport, and don't forget to go over to the Daily Express transfer newsletter if you want transfer news pinged to your inbox. But you also have a live blog running every day with stories throughout, just keeping you up to date with all the latest from the window. And there's about 7-8 days to go, so I'm sure you'll be hearing from me again very soon. Thanks for watching. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you all soon.